here, so we're having a conversation about reparation, and this is can you introduce yourself?
Sure, my name is Scott Ainsley. I am a councillor in Lambeth, South London. I've been a councillor for 10 years. I was London's Green MEP for 7 months before we got booted out by a controlled right-wing narrative that took us out of Europe, the biggest act of self-harm. Anyway, I went on a reparations march as London's Green MEP, and I learnt more about African reparations and the systemic abuse that happened centuries ago, which continues to this day, and that's what's led to our conversation just now. We passed the motion successfully in Lambeth Council. It was a cross-party motion to get the United Kingdom to atone and begin a reparative justice process for the transatlantic trafficking of enslaved Africans. That has led to the setting up of the first all-party parliamentary group to discuss this topic. But reparations is not about state top-down solutions, it's from the grassroots. So what in the community in Lambeth, home to the largest African Caribbean population in the UK, what can they do to atone and repair locally? That's what we're looking at. Because when national government fails to do the right thing, let local government show that leadership.
Yeah, it's going to need to come from.
Yep, so it's spread to Bristol, which is a great, we're looking to get Liverpool Council, all these places that kind of are built on the backs of slaves and enslavement, to pass similar motions and just leave this historical place lagging behind democracy, true democracy, because this isn't working. This isn't democracy. This is just a bunch of extractivist guys that are in a revolving door between a continued exploitative sector of private sector, extractivism into government, back into extractivism, back into the City of London, who, as you say, facilitates all this ongoing debt. We need to cancel the debt. We need to begin a reparative justice, and we need to heal as a species, because we've exploited peoples for so long.
Yeah.
And it's time that, I think, the royal family's talking about it, Belgium's talking about it. We need them to stop talking about it. We just need them to get on and do it.
Amazing. And Rob, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. I'm Rob Callender. I'm an Extinction Rebellion UK Actions Coordinator.
Yeah, and you've done some work around the whole concept of reparation, or we've chatted about this before.
Yeah. So, I was did some work in 2020 with Africans Rising, which is a Pan-African group in Africa, and they had a few demands. They worked really heavily, they lobbied really heavily against the Belgian monarchy. They also came here to lobby the monarchy here, because obviously it's to do with the legacy and where that legacy came from, and also sort of trying to challenge all the different figureheads of state. So they had a campaign called Rewrite History, with the right spelt as in correct, and one of their, they had 4 demands to that. One was truth and healing commissions, so a little bit like the truth and reconciliation commissions in South Africa. Debt cancellation was a huge part of it. Reparations, but the first one, and almost the sort of silliest one, is just an honest acknowledgement of the harm and human costs of slavery, because that hasn't happened. That hasn't really come. But I think what you're saying is so important, because the local level is really where the healing will come from. Absolutely. And that's something that I think is really, and that's what we're here for, and that's what I think is so exciting about this, is this isn't, just as you said at the end there, this is not going to change until we change the politics, until we change the political system. And I think this call for citizens' assemblies, emergency citizens' assemblies, this is just a beginning to get a couple on the table that are a no-brainer, but it's got to go much deeper. This is the beginning of a healing process. It's going to be long, but ultimately, if we don't do it, it just gets worse. Yeah.
And what we can have is state-led solutions.
Okay,
so Cameron goes to Jamaica and says, we'll give you 10 million to build a new prison. I mean, this sticking plaster approach. It's got to end.
But it's again, that's all about the debt. That's all about development. That's all about going, okay, well, we'll give you this, but you're actually going to be paying us back more over time.
Yeah.
It's about keeping the knee on the neck and sort of saying, oh, I'm going to give you this little bit. And if you look at debt, I mean, it doesn't matter whether you're talking about local debt or international debt. What you're talking about is a transfer of wealth of the people who are doing the work or, you know, creating the resource to the people who have the capital in the first place. So it is an engine. It's like snakes and ladders. It's the engine of inequality, and that fuels a certain type of, you know, high-speed growth that is ultimately destroying the planet.
Yes.
And that's why the whole, you know, that's what that links it to the degrowth movement, that links it to all these other things. And you're going, ultimately, until you start changing these fundamental elements of the system, which is also about decolonization, because that system is a colonial system, the debt system we have now, and we invented it. I mean, not we personally here right now, but ultimately, you know, it sort of goes back to the Romans and a bit before that. It's about how you treat slaves. It's about how you trade in cattle. And it's literally about that, and the debt is about that.
That's right. I mean, this is the thing that we have to do. We have to get as organized as they are, because, as you say, they've been doing this for centuries. The conditioning at schools, that revolving door that it continues to extract and exploit. That's the abuse that has to stop. And I mean, even in Lambeth, where we've passed this motion, getting even the community a space to meet for free, so that they can begin to discuss some of the trauma, the generational trauma that's been experienced by people. Getting that from out of a council is proving hard at the moment, and that's the least that we can do to start something and build from a grassroots. A kind of reparative justice process, but we need to repair, and that's the key point about reparations. Not about the money. Stop the abuse. That's easy. That doesn't cost anything.
And also for the fact that, like, what we give in false aid, like we give the money that we give to Africa, we take 10 times more out in extraction, and companies here in London owning mineral rights, owning crop rights. You know, the new pipelines that are going in. So like everything that we're extracting everything from Africa and other like South American countries and globally, that's what we do, and then we give them false aid, and then we charge them interest.
Yeah, and as well, sort of just going in to undercut local economies, like making sure that, you know, they're giving you raw materials, and this has been going on for again, decades and decades, if not centuries. You're taking raw materials out, and in return, they're having to buy much more expensive machinery to take those raw materials out, because ultimately you're saying, well, you run your own mine sort of thing, we're going to give you that, but you're going to get the funding from us, then you've got to use that funding to buy the stuff from us, so whose economy is it benefiting? And then that finance gets taxed here. The money doesn't go back to Africa, you know, for the finance that they've had to get from the UK. So you're talking about a system that is, you know, if you were looking at it from a completely objective point of view, you go, this is massively corrupt. This is just, you know, it makes
perpetual slavery.
Yeah, it just makes no sense.
Slavery,
but that's on purpose. You know, that's why it's a colonial system. It's absolutely designed to do that. And you know, and that's exactly what you're saying about repair. For me, it's like, it's also about context and being able to look at, you know, we all have to do this stuff. You know, we take action in all sorts of different ways. It might be a local tree that you've got to defend, and it's important. All those things are important. You can't compare them. But ultimately, the context is, until you cancel the debt, until you literally take the knee off the neck of sub-Saharan Africa and South America and some of the poorest countries in the world, but the most mineral rich, until you take the knee off the neck, there's nothing we're doing here that's going to bring that resource curve down. And so what's driving that? Well, actually, it's the City of London. You know, I say this again and again, it's actually happening in this country. The people who need to take action, who need to start paying the debt, is the people who live here. And that's a huge burden.
Is it David Olusogu who has done the documentaries on this enslavement and the money from enslavement? Most of the laws that sit underneath that building just there are all to do with property. Rolls and rolls and rolls to protect people's property, to protect people's land, and that included human beings. That's a travesty that everyone who has any historical legacy to that property has to give up that right. Has to give up what is protected, and the police, they're paid for by it all. I mean, it's a very, very corrupt system, and what we need to do as a movement from the grassroots is continue these conversations.
Dialogue.
It's the dialogue, absolutely, but then the actions.
Yeah, because within that system there are people who simply don't know it, who are just part of it, who left school and just need a job and just need to pay the bills and just need to get through it. That's one of the hardest things is, you especially in certain countries, it's the levels of, it's the plastic, it's all the things that you get forced into, and if you try and spend your entire life going out of your way to live a life without sin in terms of climate, in terms of other things, you'll never be able to achieve it. It takes up all your brain, and you're not going to be able to actually do the right repairing. You're spending all the time thinking about your impact, but actually it's a system that has to change.
It's a system that has to change.
Yeah.
And this is why it's so easy to attack the messengers, and that's why all the right wing and people say do you have a car, do you fly, do you eat meat, and it's attack, and it's kind of, it's like Jesus
Buy
said,
unwaxed lemons from
this is it. It's just absolutely ridiculous. And it's I've been hanging around with the Christians on Friday, and I went to the mass with them, and it's really powerful. And it's literally is like Jesus, let he who has never sinned throw the first stone. And we're all carbon sinners.
Yes.
But what we need to do is we need to change the system and change the way and acknowledge how the system's structured.
Yeah, well, they've definitely got the control of the narrative. Even these people that are on ITV News, and I can't remember Richard Madeley. The way he attacks climate activists is just tantamount of that male white arrogance that we're entitled to do this and you're this, pointing the finger. No, let's have a look at the systemic abuse that has been caused by men like us, and I include myself in all of that, that have been systematically exploiting, extracting, ignoring, not listening to, not hearing people's voices. And I'm afraid dinosaurs like that, their time must be up, and it must be soon.
I was saying actually to ITV on Friday that one of the issues, the blame for why there's disruptive tactics, or why this is happening like this, or why activists have to do certain things, actually also is shared by, it's not, it doesn't belong to any one sector, but it's shared by the media. If the media did their job of holding the powerful to account for not enacting the right policies, then we wouldn't have to be here, and I would much rather not be here.
But they're not allowed to do that, because most of the printed media, most of the broadcast media is owned by people that they are offshore. They're tax dodgers. I'm sorry.
Door,
revolving door.
Exactly.
They are tax dodgers.
We got three non-dom billionaires who control 70% of the printed media in this country.
Absolutely. That has to end.
And this actually, the nice woman who was interviewing me said at the end of it, she said, but we're here, we're trying really hard, what more do you want? And I was like, okay, maybe it's not you. Again, the media's not a monolith. It's the system that needs to change.
It's the
system that needs to change. And there's surely plenty of great people who are really trying to get the voice out, and they just can't. And so we end up having to, put ourselves out here in our tens of thousands just to be heard. And they're still only talking about, will they disrupt the marathon? The marathon hasn't been disrupted. And they're not going to put out a press release
news
saying,
here.
Exactly. They're not going to say tomorrow, oh, well, the marathon wasn't disrupted. We should maybe listen to the climate protesters.
Exactly.
It's just a story.
It's
just a story.
So we need to break the system.
And also, let's not forget the fact
we need
that
to repair it.
Repair the system. Repair. Okay.
But it was refreshing to see Andrew Marr speaking on LBC away from the constraints of the BBC, because we all know that since Cameron threatened the BBC with put his foot on the neck of the BBC to say, we're going to take away the licence fee, the BBC has been nervous about being too critical of the government. But this government needs criticism.
It needs it.
It absolutely.
Otherwise, who are you fighting for?
Exactly.
You've got to protect the people who need protection. What's the point in protecting the people with the money? They don't need the protection. They can afford it. It's the people. You've got to protect them. But it's all backwards.
We also need to look at the Lobbying Act. Now, the Conservatives, the Lib Dems, and Labour Party, they don't want to be exposed with the reforms of the transparency that would come out with a reformation of the Lobbying Act, because that's the real issue. It's the system that needs to change, and not many people are talking about the reforming of the Lobbying Act to make sure that all of the politicians that are representing us, they have to openly declare and being far more transparent than they have been about who is actually pulling their strings, because we all know that that's what's happening.
Absolutely, yeah.
But it's not being
Well,
talked
it was
about
like that
enough.
Led by Donkeys action recently.
Absolutely.
I don't know if you talked about that. You know, what's your daily rate? £10,000. What? Was that daily rate or monthly rate? I can't remember.
Daily.
But daily rate.
Hourly for some of these guys.
£10,000 a day.
Yeah, absolutely.
Crazy.
Matt Hancock, £10,000 a day. I mean, just mad. You know, absolutely mad.
And what
when
does that-
people are at
what
food
does that
banks,
buy?
When their constituents are at food banks, you know, what is that about?
Second
and they're
jobbers.
giving them access to the doors and I don't know. That's
revolving.
It's too much.
Well, look, local elections are coming up soon. You have a choice. You get a chance to, put in a party that is really, really making a difference, that is speaking truth to power, and that is the Green Party. Unashamedly, I'm a Green councillor, have been for 10 years. I wouldn't be in the party if they were pulling the same kind of stunts, blocking reforms to the Lobbying Act, if that's what the Green Party were doing, but they're not. So get out and vote and change locally where you are in the local elections. They're coming up on the 4th of May, and may the 4th be with you.
And whichever way you vote, I would say also just join us on the streets.
Absolutely.
Come out to Extinction Rebellion.
Yeah.
We're just, I mean, the tagline is Unite to Survive, and that's what we mean. And it's all about dialogue. You've got to be able to trust each other, talk to each other, tell the truth to each other. Not everyone here agrees. But
we need to talk.
It feels so transformative. Around us is this amazing assembly of people, all in groups of 6, and they're all having these amazing discussions.
There you go. And this like 15-minute conversation we've had just now, I've learned so much, and we all need collectively to share this knowledge with as many people as possible. You know. On that note, it's been quite a long interview.
Just to say, the Green Party is the only party that has actually passed a motion as a national party on atoning and reparative justice for the transatlantic trafficking of enslaved Africans.
Yeah, and that is amazing.
It is.
You know, and this is what we need. We just need to push.
Yep.
You know.
So that's a challenge to the other parties to do the same.
There we go. Okay, guys,
Cheers, buddy.
been good conversations. Okay.
Great to meet you.
All right.
You too.
There we go.